Again, they are, in most cases, they are steel blanks. The bearing surface is machined down to a certain hardness. The cylinder head itself is machined where the camshafts go. It has a special machining process that it goes through. So there is no cam bearing. It runs directly in the cylinder head. And it's critical that the cap that came off goes back in the same position. Okay, like most bearings, once a bearing develops a wear pattern, you must maintain that pattern. If you switch the pattern up, the bearing will wear. Okay. So again, the service is there, but you go through the inspection process to check the bearing surfaces to make sure they're smooth, no scratches, no big scars or nicks. The big thing here is minimal oil. There's very, very little oil that goes into lubricating the camshaft on the bearing surface. We lubricate the lobes that run on the followers. We get plenty of oil, but the bearing itself gets very little oil. Very minimal oil that it needs to do its job. Okay. But some other engines may have a cam bearing, just like your rod bearings or your main shaft, crankshaft main bearings would be the same thing. And it could be a two-piece or it could be pressed into the head itself. Okay.
So it's not, if it's pressed into it, is it removable?
It's removable, yeah. It's removable and replaceable. A lot of times,
Somewhere about there. Yeah, really interesting.
I need a motherfucking star. What motherfucking stars at? What motherfucking stars and bars?
Can't find it?
no.
No.
I thought it was in there, but it's not. Again, variable valve timing. Again, one of the innovations to improve fuel economy. This helps with volumetric efficiency, the ability to fill the cylinder with fuel air and to exhaust it to increase the airflow in the engine. Okay, it's accomplished in a couple of different ways. Again, some systems are set to what they're going to do. The original VTech system, it was either on or off. It switched it over to a different rocker arm, and that's where it ran that. Okay. Some of the other ones, the early Toyota systems, same thing. It moved. Most of them only moved the exhaust camshaft, but it moved the camshaft to a different position to allow to exhaust the cylinder, improving airflow, improving fuel economy. Some of it was done for emissions purposes also. So it helped with what we call nitrosus of oxide, not nitrous oxide, which is we call it NOx, NOx, which is the most harmful thing coming out the tailpipe. We have to reduce that. We're trying to reduce it to 0. But the variable valve timing is really, really helping with that. Continuously variable systems, we alter both camshafts. We alter the intake cam and we alter the exhaust cam. As engine RPM changes, we rotate the camshafts to a better position. And again, you vary the position, you vary the lift on that camshaft at that point in time. As engine speed increases, we can get better flow into the engine. Sometimes we call it a dual pattern camshaft or a 4-pattern camshaft. So you change the pattern on the camshaft. I also have to look at, on some, especially the V8 engines, what you have a problem with is air distribution, how the air is distributed in the engine. Remember, if you have a throttle body and it's at the front of the engine, it takes longer for the air to get to those rear cylinders than it does to the 2 front cylinders.
So it's good if it is the red engine?
Yeah, it's better if it's centralized. We like them centralized because then your intake runners can be almost the same length to get the air into the cylinders without a whole lot of delay. So if the throttle body's at the front, it takes longer for it to get to the rear and then get into the cylinders. So you have that, we're talking about the column of air, that's what you run into. So some have come up with a dual pattern camshaft. So as the engine RPM goes up, we change to a different pattern on that cam to delay the valve opening until we move the air to that point. Then you
slowing it down even at a high RPM.
Right, you slow it down, let the air get there, then open it, and then fill it. So these are some of a lot of the newer stuff that's happening out there. Cylinder deactivation is cylinder deactivation is another fuel-saving device, whereas you drop cylinders in the engine and you make the engine run at a smaller displacement at a relatively higher speed. Not everybody. No. Yeah, most of anything with pretty much a V8 in it has gone to this. Ford didn't do it. Well, GM, yeah, all the GM trucks have it. Mm-hmm. They've had it since '06. And the Chryslers, I'm sorry, not the Chryslers, the Ram trucks. And then the Chrysler cars, the 300, the 300C, and then the Challenger, most of them have it.
So what's called flex fuel, whatever that
Flex fuel. Flex fuel is pretty much a joke. We probably would get rid of that.
What about algae fuel?
Well, they're not going to get rid of it. Flex fuel, the car is set up so it will run on the gasoline that we use, or I'd say 75% of the country uses, is what we call E10, which has 10% ethanol in it. The Midwest part of the country, they use an E85. Okay, it is 85% ethanol, but 15% gasoline and it's 85% ethanol. So in the fuel tank, there is a sensor that can tell the difference between an E10 and an E85. So if you running across the country and you stop in Texas, St. Louis, Kansas, and you have to buy E85 fuel. You put it in there, the sensor picks it up, and it changes all the computer settings on the car to say that we're now running on E85. So all the emissions will change. We go to a different set of parameters as far as what we're looking for.
What's the difference on the two different E10, E85 ethanol?
Well, again, what we run is E10.
Right.
It's 90% gasoline and it has 10% ethanol in it. E85 is 85% ethanol with 15% gasoline.
Okay. Now I asked because I thought it was like a more performance type of
No.
thing. Okay, so everything is just
No.
okay.
As a country, we grow a lot of corn. If anybody's ever driven across Kansas, Idaho, Iowa, Kansas, some parts of St. Louis, what am I trying to think? Nebraska, and Oklahoma. You can get on a road out there, especially in Kansas, and you can go 100 miles.
Yeah.
And it's all corn on both sides.
Route 10 too, right?
Yeah, some parts of Route 10. Yeah, it's that bad. It's just, and it's they grow a tall corn. A lot of their corn, the short corn is 10 foot tall. Like we grow around here, it's like 6 foot, 7 foot tall. They grow a 10, 12, 15 foot tall corn. It has some of the stalks have like 12 years on them, as opposed to ours. It has 4, maybe 6. 6 is a good number for us, but most of theirs have like 12 years on them. So ethanol is big in there, especially when you go north, like Michigan, Wisconsin, Michigan, places like that. They grow. You know, when you fly across this country and you look down and it's just corn. Yeah, it's immense. We grow a lot of corn.
What's going on in California?
California does not grow a lot of corn.
I'm not talking about the
No, they don't run E85.
Do they have that algae fuel? The algae fuel?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Where everybody's experimenting with algae. I saw a piece about a month ago, and the guy has actually come up with a method to actually, he can take, he makes a concentrate of algae in a small test tube, and he's actually come up with a vat like the size of this room, and he can grow that much algae in like a week's time. So he's learning to do it on a larger and larger and larger scale. So he can grow it, but the process from getting it from the algae to the fuel takes a little bit longer. But the thing is, he can grow it quickly.
Algae doesn't grow quickly.
Yeah, he's got it down to where he can grow it from a small test tube to I think 20,000, 30,000 gallons in under a week's time. So, we can turn it into fuel. It's sort of like a biodiesel type thing, but it's on the, instead of it being a diesel, it's more on the gasoline side. It's actually shown to be 20 times better than ethanol. It's actually, you can get more energy. You can get more energy out of it than you can out of gasoline. So that means you'll burn less and get the same energy. And it's renewable. It's renewable on a small scale. It's just you got to get it up and running, and we can use it without a whole lot of conversion. So converting is always a big issue. Everybody puts it out there. Oh, biodiesel, just pour it in the gas tank. No, it's not that easy. You know, going from French fry grease to a diesel fuel takes a little bit of a process. It takes some other chemicals to help convert it over, so it is burnable. But the algae, no, it doesn't take a whole lot. It's not a big process to get it from a test tube to the gas pumps. And again, it's highly renewable. We can actually, cut a 2-foot hole in the ground, dump some water in it, and grow algae like overnight. Maybe. Well, everything's gonna